Now we are going to see about insight learning. The theory of learning by insight is a contribution of a group of psychologists called Gestalt psychologists. Gestalt is a German noun which has no English equivalent. The nearest English translation of Gestalt is configuration or an organized whole. Wolfgang Kohler, Max Riedemer, Kurt Kofka were the prominent Gestalt psychologists. They believe that the whole is more important than its parts. Gestalists consider learning as the development of insight, which is primarily concerned with the nature of perception. Perception is the process by which an organism interprets and organizes sensation to produce meaningful experiences of the world. According to Gestalt psychology, while learning, the learner always perceives the situation as a whole, and after seeing and evaluating the different relationships, takes proper decision intelligently. They use the term insight to describe this kind of learning by perceiving the situation as a whole. Insight refers to the sudden flash in the mind about the solution of the problem. Kohlberg's insight learning. In 1920, German psychologist Wolfgang Kohler studied the behavior of apes. He designed a few experiments that led to the development of one of the first cognitive theories of learning, which he called insight learning. Kohler's experiment. Kohler conducted many experiments with chimpanzees to describe the term insight. These experiments are the illustration of learning by insight. In one experiment, Kohler put the chimpanzee inside a cage and a banana was hung from the roof of a cage. A box was placed inside the cage. The chimpanzee tried to reach the banana by jumping but could not succeed. Suddenly, he got an idea and used the box as a jumping platform by placing it just below the hanging banana. In another experiment, Kohler made this problem difficult and 2 or 3 boxes were required to reach the banana. In a more complicated experiment, the banana was placed outside the cage of the chimpanzee. 2 sticks, one longer than the other, were placed inside the cage. One was hollow at one end so that the other stick could be pushed into it to form a longer stick. The banana was so kept that it could not be picked up by any of the 2 sticks. The chimpanzee first tried to reach out the banana with these sticks one after the other but failed. Suddenly, the animal had a bright idea and joined the 2 sticks together and reached the banana. In these experiments, Kohler used many different chimpanzees. Sultan was the intelligent of all the Kohler chimpanzees and could solve all the problems. Steps in insight learning. Identifying the problem. The learner recognizes the presence of an intervening obstacle on his way to the goal. Understanding the problem. The learner observes the problematic situation, analyzes it, and perceives the relation between the goal and the obstacles. Incubation of ideas. After analyzing the total situation, he reaches its conclusion by means of hesitation, pause, concentrated attention, etc. Trial mode of response. The learner makes initial efforts in the form of simple trial and error mechanism. Sustained attention. The learner maintains frequent, recurrent attention to the goal and motivation. Next step is insight development. In a certain moment, there is a sudden perception of relationship in the total situation and the organism directly performs the required acts. Steady repetition of adaptive behavior. After getting an insightful solution, the individual tries to implement it in another situation. Comprehension of ability. The learner reaches the ability to understand the relevant parts of the situation and overlooking the irrelevant ones. Factors affecting insight learning. Past experience help in insightful solution of problems. A child cannot solve the problems of modern mathematics unless he is well acquainted with its symbolic language. Insightful solution depends upon the basic intelligence of the learner. The more intelligence of the individual, the greater will his insight be. Insight learning depends upon the situation in which the learner is placed. Insightful learning has to pass through the process of trial and error, but this stage does not last long. After obtaining an insightful solution of a particular type of problem, the individual tries to implement it in another situation, demanding a similar type of solution. Implications of insight learning. As learning is a purposeful and goal-oriented task, the learner has to be well acquainted with these objectives. He should be familiar with the goals and purposes of every task. The teacher should represent the subject matter as a whole to facilitate insight learning. As insight depends upon the previous experience of the learner, the teacher must check the previous experiences of the child and relate them with the new learning situation. The theory of insightful learning requires the organization of perceptual field and learning material in the form of gestalt, that is, the whole. While planning curriculum, gestalt principles should be given due consideration. A particular subject should not be treated as a mere collection of isolated facts. It should be closely integrated into a whole. Thank you.